In this video, we're going to talk about targets you should look for when using a knife for self-defense. Hi guys, Paul from Warrior Tactical Systems here. I've had some questions from students about targeting with the knife. What kind of targets should you look for, and what are your goals in those targets? So one of the things that we need to understand when we're using a knife for self-defense from criminal violence is, why are we using this knife? What is our goal? Is our goal to kill the person or to not kill them? What is the goal? The goal is to stop their action. Okay, just like with a firearm, whether they live or die is secondary to stopping their actions. That's the first thing I need to focus on. So, one of the things with a knife, the psychological aspect, the psychological stop. If the guy reaches toward me and I can just cut his arm, and of course I'm justified in using deadly force. Maybe he's swinging a club or a broken bottle at me, and I cut his fingers, say. He might just say, "Whoa, I don't want anything to do with this. I got cut. This hurts," and run away. But he also might not even know he got cut. Under the stress and adrenaline, he might not even feel it. So the thing about psychological stops is they're just unpredictable. We can't say for sure when someone may or may not give up. So those are kind of secondary. If they happen, they happen. A cut to the face can be very psychologically devastating and might get the person to quit. But we don't want to rely on that. If they stop their actions, I'm done. I don't need to cut them anymore. I don't need to fight anymore. But as long as they're still attacking me, I need to look at other things to be hunting for rather than just looking for that psychological stop. Now, one of the things that we like to look at is the structure. If I can cut their structure in some way, meaning their muscles, their ligaments, their tendons, then I have a mechanical stop. I've damaged some area of their body that won't allow them to continue on no matter how psychologically determined they are. So for knife versus other weapon, a lot of times if we can, especially a similar length weapon, we try to cut the weapon-bearing limb, defang the snake. And what we're trying to do, we're trying to affect the structure that holds the hand shut. The tendons and ligaments inside the arm here that do that work. So that's a nice shot to look at, and you guys have probably already seen that on my defanging the snake video, where we target that as a primary target because it's coming towards us. It's just very practical. But it also has another reason behind it, which is to attack that structure, make it so that even if they're determined, they couldn't continue. The problem is a slash inside the arm isn't always guaranteed to cut every tendon that holds this grip shut. If they're very determined and I don't get clear through everything, then obviously their structure's still going to work. So you have to keep that in mind. Never expect your technique to work perfectly the first time. I cut him, he's still holding the knife. Well, my instructor told me he would drop it. Well, it doesn't always work that way, so I need to be prepared. Say, okay, I'm going to have to do it again. I may have to try something different. Obviously it still depends on what kind of armor they might have as well. If they have a thick coat on, if you don't have a very long blade, or you're not keeping it sharp, which is, you got to keep it sharp, those could all be factors. Cutting the leg can also help you. Again, you're affecting their structure. If I can get a cut on the leg, I may be able to get away from them now. They can't follow me, they can't run as easily. So even if I just end up across the front of the thigh into the quadriceps, it's going to make it more difficult to move. It's going to make it harder for them to follow me. Now, it's going to be kind of tough to cut the Achilles tendon or something like that, unless you were, really in close, or they kicked at you in some way. But if I can affect that structure in some way, it's going to make it harder for them to come toward me. But again, keep in mind, human beings are durable. They may have thick, heavy clothing on. They may have a Carhartt jacket or something like that, or something heavy on their legs. And it depends on your blade, the length, the sharpness. If you have like an ice pick, if you're just using an improvised weapon like a pen, you're not going to be able to slash that structure. So you have to be flexible. There may be a time when you're using a different type of weapon, and now you have to be flexible in your tactics. So we also want to look at breathing. Another good thing to attack besides structure is the breathing. If I can stop the person from breathing, or make it extremely difficult to breathe, they're going to be less effective. They're going to be less able to attack me. And if I can stop their breathing altogether, then they're no longer a threat. So for breathing, we have the lungs. If we can get into the lungs, those are obviously protected by the ribs. Doesn't mean we can't punch through them, but they do have a structure around them. And you have to, again, consider the clothing, length of the blade, that sort of thing. but the lungs are a good option, and coming up under the armpit in some way is a good way to get to them. The throat is also a good option because, again, it's going to be carrying oxygen into the lungs. The nose and mouth can be an option to affect the breathing. It might not stop it completely, but if I get a good cut across the nose or mouth, all that blood pouring in, it may make it more difficult to breathe, besides the psychological components of it. So things to think about. The throat, face are exposed. They're not protected by anything in most cases. So I have those readily available. I just have to get to them. Okay. And then we have to look at blood loss. If I can cause enough blood loss on this person, then I have a good chance of stopping them from coming toward me. That can take time, though, depending on where you cut. The arteries are good targets because they're pretty practical. If I'm cutting into the wrist here, I might get that radial artery and get some blood loss going. The farther up the limb you go, the better the blood loss you're going to get inside here into that brachial and get the blood really flowing. Same way with the legs. If you can get to the femoral, something like that, you're going to get that blood flowing. The heart can work, again, depending on the blade, the thickness of the person. You have that sternum, you have the ribs in the way, so it is a somewhat protected structure, but it is possible to get to it, depending again on the situation. You also have the liver, and the kidneys are really good bleeders. So the liver, if you're training in boxing or Thai boxing, hopefully you're practicing hitting that. Okay, so that's on my opponent's right side, down here the ribs. Okay, so that's a good place to punch as well, or throw your kick into, or knee, because it's very painful to get hit there. But it's also a good target for your blade. And then the kidneys are at the back. Again, those are good bleeders, lower back, depending on if you get into that closer range. So if we get that blood loss going, they're going to get weaker. They're going to be less able to make decisions, and they're going to be less able to attack us over time. But again, don't expect that to be instant. It's going to take a little bit of time, depending on where you cut. But you do want to learn that anatomy. Another thing to think about is the vision. Okay, if I go straight to the person's eyes, if I get a shot straight into their eyes, that's going to affect their vision. If I get deep enough, I'm going to get into more than just their vision. But if I get something across the top of their head, even the forehead above the eyes somewhere, I'm going to get blood running down into their face. That's going to make it harder to see and therefore harder to fight. And then we can also think about the central nervous system. Okay, so if I shut that down, I shut everything down, the brain and spine. Great places to shoot with a gun, can be slightly more difficult with a knife. The spine is a small target, and it's pretty well protected. But there is a time and a place where you can go into the spinal column with the knife. Same way with the brain. Again, it depends on the blade length, but if you look at a skull, you have openings in a skull. So some of the good openings would be the eye sockets. If you insert the blade in here, you're not going to run into a bunch of bone like you would on top of the head. And again, it depends on what kind of tool you're using. You may not have a knife that's able to just pop right through the skull. It depends on what you got. So the eyes, the nose, there's a hole behind the nose, obviously, into the skull. If you've seen a skull before, you know what that looks like, and we can drive back up and into the brain. You may be able to get there under the chin, but that depends on the length of your blade. A better option is through the roof of the mouth, but again, it depends on the situation, how you got there. And then you also have the ear. Okay, again, an opening here where you can try to take advantage of and slam it through there. So a few targets that you can look at, a few systems we can attack on the body, and some of the concepts that we use with the blade. But again, remember your goal. Your goal is to stop their action. Okay, so we want to do that as efficiently as possible. We don't want to have to kill anyone, but if they've attacked us, then that's secondary. Their primary is to, if they have attacked us, I should say, with some type of lethal force where we're justified in doing this in the first place, then I want to focus on stopping them as quickly as possible. It doesn't matter about whether they live or die is secondary to that goal, stopping their action. Learn anatomy, do some more research, and learn where the veins run, where the arteries run. We want to attack arteries generally, but the veins are right next to them, so they're all good targets. Anything that bleeds is a good target. I went to one place where we were knife sparring. They said, "Oh, well, we don't cut the offhand." and because I was targeting the guy's offhand, he was leaving it out, and I was blasting him. He said, we don't generally cut the offhand here because it really doesn't do anything. It's not going to have any effect. Well, if it bleeds, I'll cut it. I don't care what it is. Anything gets near me, I'm going to try to cut it. It's going to have that psychological impact. It's going to start some kind of blood flow, and it's a functional target. So there's some general ideas on targeting for the knife. Stay safe, guys, and stay bladed. Okay, guys, so if you enjoyed that video, hit the like button, subscribe to Warrior Tactical Systems. We do one video a week. And leave me a comment. Let me know what are your primary targets. What do you look for? What kind of areas did I miss? I appreciate the feedback.